What if I told you that almost every budgeting method you've ever tried was designed to make you fail? Not because you lack discipline, not because you're bad with money, but because these methods were built without understanding how real human psychology actually works. I spent 2 years testing every major budgeting system out there, and today I'm going to tell you exactly which ones work, which ones are a complete waste of your time, and the one approach that genuinely changed my financial life. But wait until you hear the twist at the end. It might just flip your money mindset forever. Stick around because the answer might surprise you. So let me take you back to where this whole experiment started. I was the person who had 17 different budgeting apps downloaded on my phone, had tried spreadsheets, cash envelopes, the 50/30/20 rule, zero based budgeting, you name it. And every single time, somewhere around week 3 or 4, I'd fall off completely. I'd spend too much at a restaurant, feel my heart pounding with guilt, tell myself I'd restart next month, and the cycle would begin again. Sound familiar? Or maybe you're wondering, is this really me too? I figured the problem was me. Turns out the problem was the method. Let's start with the most popular one that gets recommended everywhere, the 50/30/20 rule. The idea is simple: 50% of your income goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings. Clean, easy to remember, and honestly, pretty useless for most people. Here's why. If you live in a high cost city and your rent alone eats 60% of your take home pay, this rule doesn't just fail you, it actively makes you feel like a financial disaster when you're not. What if a simple percentage was actually setting you up for heartbreak? The percentages assume a certain income level and cost of living that simply doesn't apply universally. I tested this for 3 months. By the end, I had managed to stuff my actual spending into categories that technically fit the rule but didn't reflect any real change in my habits. I was just moving numbers around to feel better about myself. Zero actual progress. But hold on, this was just the beginning of the budget battles. Next up, the cash envelope system. This one gets a lot of love from old school personal finance communities, and I genuinely respect the psychology behind it. When you physically handle cash and watch it leave your hands, you feel the spending more intensely than swiping a card. That part is real and backed by behavioral research. But here's where it breaks down for modern life: automatic payments, online subscriptions, digital transactions, they just don't fit into physical envelopes. Imagine the frustration of watching your perfect system crumble under a barrage of app notifications. Ring a bell. I spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to reconcile my digital spending with my physical envelope system. By month two, I'd abandoned it entirely. Great concept, terrible execution for 2026 life. And if you think that's bad, wait until you see what zero based budgeting did to my sanity. Then there's zero based budgeting. And honestly, this one is closer to something that actually works. The concept is that every single dollar of your income gets assigned a job. So at the end of the month, you have $0 left unallocated. Not $0 in your account, but zero unassigned dollars. This forces intentionality in a way the other methods don't. I tested this rigorously and it produced the best results of any traditional method I tried. But there was still a psychological friction point that kept tripping me up. When I went over in one category, even by a small amount, the whole budget felt like a collapsing house of cards, leaving me devastated and ready to quit. The rigidity was its own enemy. What if the perfect system was actually your biggest foe? And don't even get me started on most of the apps out there. I tested 6 of them over about 8 months. Some were too complicated and required constant manual input. Others were so automated that I never actually engaged with my finances at all. The automation that was supposed to help me became a way for me to completely ignore my money while pretending I was managing it. One app was so aggressive with its notifications that I started ignoring all financial related alerts altogether, which is the complete opposite of what you want. Ever felt that overwhelming buzz turning into total numbness? So, after going through all of this, I had a kind of breakthrough moment. That triumphant rush when everything clicks. Have you ever felt it? I stopped asking which budgeting method is best and started asking a completely different question. What actually causes people to improve their finances over time? And the answer I kept coming back to had nothing to do with the specific method at all. It had everything to do with awareness and consistency of engagement. Think about it this way. Imagine you're trying to lose weight. You can follow keto, intermittent fasting, calorie counting, or any other approach. But the common thread in every study on long term weight management is that people who succeed are the ones who consistently pay attention to what they're eating, regardless of which specific plan they follow. Personal finance works exactly the same way. The people who genuinely improve their financial situation are the ones checking in regularly, not the ones who choose the theoretically perfect system. This is where things got really interesting for me. I started thinking about financial management through the lens of how a business operates. Profitable businesses don't just track spending, they track the relationship between income and expenses to understand whether they're generating a surplus. They look at their numbers monthly, they categorize spending to identify patterns, and they make strategic decisions about where that surplus goes. What if your budget wasn't a cage, but a superpower for building your empire? So I built my own system around a personal profit and loss approach. At the top, your income for the month. Then your fixed expenses, rent, insurance, loan minimums, the non negotiables, then your variable expenses, food, entertainment, shopping, the stuff that changes month to month. And whatever is left over, that's your personal net profit. That surplus is the whole game because once you have a surplus, now you have choices. You can build your emergency fund, attack debt, invest for retirement, or work toward any other goal. What made this different from everything else I tried wasn't the categories or the math. It was the mindset shift. Instead of budgeting feeling like restriction, it started feeling like running a successful operation. Missing a budget category felt less like personal failure and more like a data point to optimize. That emotional reframe changed everything about how I engaged with my money. Now, here's the part I want you to really sit with. This approach only works if you actually check in with your numbers consistently. I started reviewing my accounts at least once a week, and eventually it became something I genuinely looked forward to rather than dreaded. Over time, spending stopped feeling like a moral judgment on my character and started feeling like neutral information. I overspent on dining out this month. Interesting data point. Let me adjust next month. No guilt spiral, no abandoning the whole system. Just information. But let me give you something concrete and practical. Here's the exact process that works. First, at the start of each month, look at your calendar. What events are coming up? Birthdays, holidays, concerts, anything that involves spending. Build those into your plan before the month starts so your budget actually reflects your real life instead of some idealized version of it. Second, write down your expected income and immediately decide what portion goes to savings and investments before you do anything else. Pay yourself first, then automate it so it happens without requiring willpower. Third, list your fixed expenses, then your variable ones, and leave a small buffer because life is unpredictable and rigid budgets break on contact with reality. Fourth, track your actual spending weekly, not daily, not in real time, just once a week for about 10 minutes. This is where the habit lives. The tracking step is where most people quit, but it's also where all the real insight comes from. When you track consistently over 2 or 3 months, patterns emerge that you simply cannot see any other way. You might discover you're spending 3 times what you thought on takeout. You might realize your streaming subscriptions have quietly doubled. You might find a category where you've been way too restrictive and could actually loosen up without any impact on your goals. That information is worth more than any app or formula. Here's one more thing I want to address directly. A lot of budgeting content will tell you to just cut expenses and you'll be fine. And yes, spending awareness matters. But if your income is stretched so thin that cutting a few lattes doesn't move the needle, then the answer has to include finding ways to grow that income. Budgeting a scarcity problem cannot be budgeted away through restriction alone. The two levers are always income and expenses, and you need to be honest with yourself about which one needs more attention in your situation. So, to bring this all the way back to where we started, I tried every budgeting method. The 50-30-20 rule taught me about categories but failed on real life flexibility. Cash envelopes taught me about the psychology of physical spending but couldn't survive the digital world. Zero based budgeting got me close but broke under emotional pressure. Apps kept me distracted from actually engaging with my finances. What actually worked was treating my finances like a business, tracking a personal profit and loss monthly, checking in weekly, paying myself first, and making the whole process something I could look forward to instead of dread. The method matters less than the consistency, but having the right mindset around that method is what makes consistency possible in the first place. If you've been bouncing between systems and feeling like the failure is somehow about you personally, I promise you it's not. You just haven't found the frame that clicks yet. Try the profit and loss approach for 60 days, and I genuinely believe you'll see a difference. Drop a comment below and let me know which budgeting method you've tried and whether any of them actually stuck for you. By the way, I've included a link below to a free budgeting worksheet that can help streamline this process for you. I hope it's helpful. Also, be sure to check out this video here where we dive deeper into the action steps you can take based on what we just covered. See you in the next one.